All right, everybody. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of In Liberty and Health. Hopefully, however you're listening, hopefully you're doing well. I apologize. I did have the street dated for yesterday at 7 p.m. I don't know what the hell I was doing at 7 p.m. yesterday, but of course, I'm live today. So that's my bad. So everybody that was waiting for me to go live yesterday, well, sorry, you weren't going to see me. So but anyways, yeah, like I said, hopefully everybody's doing well. Ukraine escalations, Venezuela fallout. We talk a lot about Israel stuff as well. So the whole world seems to be losing its fucking mind. And I probably shouldn't have said that right in the first 40 seconds, but that's okay. We'll keep doing it. But yeah, everywhere is just seemingly escalating more and more and more. There's fallout from the Venezuela situation. The Russians are escalating their war. The the Iran could pop off at any minute. Even though I was told that pretty much we don't have anything to worry about. Trump was a genius in the way that he handled the Iran situation, which anybody with any knowledge of the situation knows that that was a lie. Just lots of stuff going on, and we're going to cover it all today. And of course, I wanted to throw in a little Trump Taiwan stuff because there actually was something good there. And maybe I'll talk briefly about the pyramid and what I know, the food pyramid that is, and kind of some of the updates there. Eddie Grimm, good to see you. And Jay Bemke, thank you so much. Another classic episode of Kyle Horton. Very clever how you expose the ginger as some sort of red communist agent trying to get us all hooked on Fent. You guys are awesome. So I appreciate everybody being here already. Make sure on your way in you hit a like, and if you're going to be splitting out, make sure you hit a like, or make sure that the like is hit before you leave because it helps stream in the algorithm and all that good stuff. Please feel free to leave a super chat or become a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. Go down to the links below where you can find me, everything I've got going on, from the Great Megalodon to Common Crown to I think 5 till midnight might be down there. And of course, go to tigerfitness.com, use code Kyle at checkout to get all your supplements. I just got a box from Tiger Fitness today. I got so much stuff. It's unbelievable. I spent well over $300. 6 pounds of protein powder. I got cookies and cream, the peach cobbler, and chocolate chip cookie, as well as no morbidity, ambrosia, my favorite strawberry lemonade, branched chain amino acids, and I think I got my wife a sweater, and I had enough points to get a free shirt, Built bars, and I think that might be it. I feel like I might have got a few other things, but anyways, um, I think with all that out of the way, oh, of course, go to foxandsonscoffee.com, use code Kyle at checkout, and without further ado, let's get into the rest of today's show. All right. No, only 6 pounds. I probably do have pretty close to 16 pounds. Let's see. So I have I think 5 pounds. Yeah, I got well over 6 pounds of protein powder. So I got 5 pounds of birthday cake from Revolution Nutrition. Probably about 3 pounds at this point because I've eaten a lot of it. 3 pounds of the cinnamon churro, 6 pounds of chocolate hazelnut, probably 3 pounds of vanilla, 2 pounds of cookies and cream, 2 pounds of peach cobbler, and 2 pounds of chocolate chip cookies. So, well, however much that adds up to, that is how much protein powder I have. So, yes, I have all of the protein powder. And that is not like the majority of my diet, but it is a staple because it tastes good and it's an easy way to get a shitload of protein in without thinking too much about it. So, yeah, I do have a lot of protein powder in the drawers, but anyways, yeah, lots of crazy stuff going on. And actually, we'll get back to the Iran stuff here in a minute, but I think this is going to be cause to get Iran bombed again, unfortunately. This literally just came across my feed while the intro was playing. Ayatollah Khamenei, Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei mocks US President Donald Trump. So there's Khamenei. Hopefully that got pulled up here. Yes, it did. Oh, my background's not there. What the hell is going on here? There we go. That is Supreme Leader Khamenei, and he threw this up there. I think that's supposed to be like a sarcophagus. I don't know exactly what he said. How can a thoughtful person fail to see that behind these events other hands are at work? I mean, guys. Call him a liar. Go ahead, call him a liar. You can't. You can't call this man a liar. He's telling the truth. But anyways, yeah, we're gonna start off with the Russia stuff because that's what's in the title first. I do have the Taiwan stuff that I wanted to cover as well, which I have all my tabs lined up, but they are all over the friggin' place. Okay, there it is. Let's make sure we got this. Sorry guys, I will be all organized here in a second. Okay, Russia, Taiwan, and Venezuela. Okay, all right, we're all good. I apologize. Anyways, yeah, like I said, hopefully everybody is doing well. We are going to be covering lots of stuff today, so I'm going to try to get through all of it in about an hour and a half, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll go a little bit longer. Maybe I'll go a little bit shorter. I don't know. Siege D, thank you so much, brother. I got a new Nissan Altima, and I love it in the sound of the system, but the crash light came on while I was playing Slipknot. That's pretty convenient. Not a fan of Nissan, but I'm glad that you like the car, and hopefully the car treats you well, and hopefully you get lots and lots of miles out of it, lots of smiles to the gallon, not just miles, smiles, which I know sound like Santa Claus here, but regardless, hopefully the car treats you well. I hope that for every car, but I know my personal experience and my friends' experiences, they don't like Nissans. I'm a GM guy, and Honda and Toyota would be my go-to on foreign vehicles, but like I said, hopefully those treat you well. The Ultimas are a little bit better. The worst one of all the Nissans is definitely the Versa. Do not get a Versa. And if you actually want to hear some automotive stuff, I was just on the Fountainhead forum this morning. Actually, I don't know when the show is going to air, but I talked all about automotive stuff. Literally, absolutely zero libertarian stuff. Oh, by the way, Siege, thank you so much for being a member. If you're listening right now, hit a like and please consider becoming a member with Siege, and you'll get access to all the Common Crowns footage that I get and some uncensored podcasts and stuff like that. So, anyways, yeah, make sure you go check out the Fountainhead forum. Make sure you subscribe to them. That's in the community tab over there. So, yeah, go check that out. Anyways, let's kind of get into today's news stories here. We're going to start with the Orezhnik Russian missile that was dropped in Ukraine, and this is in response to some attacks on Putin's home. So, from Reuters, Russia fires hypersonic missile at target in Ukraine near NATO border. So the summary says Orezhnik hits western Ukraine near the EU and NATO border. Russia targets critical infrastructure, causing power outages in Kiev. Ukraine says at least 4 killed in the overnight strikes on Kiev, and peace talks held in Paris this past week. Now, like a lot of these peace talks seem to always be with the parties that aren't at war. Or, well, thank you, Siege. Thank you so much. Yes, listen to Siege. Go check those out. My GoPro is right here actually, and I'm going to zoom myself up. You will see all of the footage I get from this GoPro right here, which is very high quality now. The previous ones weren't as high quality, but like this new one is just beyond stellar. So anyways, the Orezhnik missile, from my understanding, has not been really used that much, and this missile goes deep into the ground, and this was really to send a message. This was after Ukrainian drones had struck near Putin's residence. Now, Ukraine has denied these claims, and we're going to get into that in the next story, but let's just say that, to me, that seems dubious at best. Kiev on January 9th, Russia fired a powerful hypersonic missile overnight at a target in Ukraine near the border with NATO member Poland and what's Kiev's European allies on Friday, described as an attempt to intimidate them from supporting Ukraine, which I don't think they're going to back away from that. It was only the second time Russia has fired the Orezhnik at Ukraine, and came amid a night of air attacks that Ukrainian authorities said also killed 4 people in Kiev, knocked out power in the capital, and damaged the Qatari embassy there. Well, I guess the Qataris, although they can apparently, if you ask everybody, influence absolutely everybody here in America, but apparently they can't influence the Russians not to bomb their base. For all the Zionists that are listening, yeah, you know that's just absolutely BS. The Rezhnik Intermediate Range Ballistic Missile, IRBM, which we always hear about, intercontinental ballistic missiles. Sorry, apparently I can't get that out. Hopefully that's not indicative for the rest of today's show. Designed to project power across Europe, which Moscow says is impossible to intercept, can carry nuclear warheads, although there was no suggestion it had done so. A senior Ukrainian official said it appeared to be carrying an inert dummy warheads. The strike appeared aimed at cowing Ukraine at a crucial juncture in talks to end the war, analysts said. It happened after a week of setbacks for Russia, including U.S. capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, which we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin. Moscow said it fired the Rezhnik missile in response to what it calls an attempted drone attack on one of Putin's residences last month, which Ukraine denies and the United States has said did not happen. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said the strike close to the EU and NATO borders posed a grave threat to security. It is absurd that Russia attempts to justify the strike with a fake Putin residence attack that never happened. He wrote on X. Putin used an IRBM near EU and NATO border in response to his own hallucinations. This is truly a global threat and demands global responses. President Volodymyr Zelensky said the strike was demonstrably close to EU states and warned Ukraine's neighbors to take note of the dangers. From the standpoint of the use of medium-range ballistics, this is the new same challenge for Warsaw, Bucharest, Budapest, and many other capitals, he said in his nightly video address. Everyone should understand it in the same way and take it equally as seriously. So basically, I'm going to be honest. I do believe more than likely they probably did strike Putin's residence. I don't believe a thing out of the Ukrainians, and I certainly don't believe the West on this, even out of the Trump administration. But to kind of talk about the talks that they've been talking about, they're never bringing the Russians in for a lot of these talks. They're really not. They're always bringing in all the members from the EU and the United States who are all co-belligerents in this fight with the Ukrainians, and then they negotiate amongst each other about how they're going to bring peace, but they never consult the opposing side. So I don't know how you're going to get peace when you're not talking to the opposing side, but apparently the US and the West and EU all think they can do this, which is just absolutely ridiculous. I wish I would have loaded the post, but Putin did downright decline the peace offering that, which really wasn't a peace offering, to Russia. They had a 20-point peace plan, which included giving the Ukrainian military up to 800,000 troops and also security, basically NATO Article 5 guarantees for Ukraine coming from the West and the EU. Putin's never going to go for that, for one. And then for two, back when they had the proposed peace plan, the talks with not Boris Yeltsin, but whoever it was back in March or April of 2022, their proposed limit, Russia's proposed limit on the Ukrainian military was like 80,000 people. They are literally at 10 times the amount of people that they're trying to get to end this war. That's just not going to happen. Russia's not going to go for it. Jack, it is always good to see you, my man. Always good to see you. Everybody make sure you like the stream as well, and make sure you are subscribed to Jack's channel. Jack does fantastic work. I highly recommend his book. The man just got a haircut recently, and I have not seen this man since he's got his haircut. So truly a tragedy, but hopefully I'll be dropping in and do a show with him soon, maybe next Saturday. I'm going to try to swing it, but we'll just have to see how dad life goes. So far it's awesome, but I have zero complaints. But anyways, continuing on here. EU announces clear escalation. It took place days after a summit where European countries pledged to offer troops for Ukraine, which, like I was just saying, they're never going to go. Russia will never go for this. In the event of a ceasefire, and Washington back to giving security guarantees for Kiev. Russia's reported use of an Rezhnik missile is a clear escalation against Ukraine and meant as a warning to Europe and to the US, the EU foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas said on X. EU countries must dig deeper into their air defense stocks now and deliver now. We must also further raise the cost of this war for Moscow, including through tougher sanctions, which I don't know how they're going to make this tougher for Russia when they're already the most sanctioned country in the entire world. I think it's literally over like 36,000 sanctions. What do? Make it 36,200? I mean, they're going to be okay. I mean, they've made it this long. They're fighting the war pretty smart, and I just don't know what else they could really do to get them to back down. It's going to be fought out on the battlefield, from my understanding, from the way that things look. And on top of that, all the cards are in Russia's hands. Why would they stop? German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who spoke to the leaders of France and Britain, said threatening gestures are intended to instill fear, but they will not work. We stand with Ukraine. Well, all standing with Ukraine has done is pretty much just kill more Ukrainians and kill some Russians to a degree. Oh, nice. Every time somebody sees me a day or two, Jack said, yeah, I'm growing it back. But basically, people will see me like a day or two if I haven't shaved. So I shave my head every other day. And if they see me on the second day, they're like, oh, you're growing your hair back out. No. Like right now, You can tell I got a little bit of fuzz up top, but I literally just shaved it yesterday morning, and I'm gonna shave it tomorrow. Tomorrow morning is leg day, so after I'm done doing that, the the head's getting shaved again. But anyways, um, yeah, pretty much all this war is leading to just more and more dead Ukrainians, and then honestly, higher energy prices for pretty much everybody that is associated with the EU or the United States. When we could really just settle the war by basically telling Ukraine, "All right, you guys got to settle." You're just going to have to accept some loss of territory, and that's going to be that. But I think what Zelensky's afraid of is the nationalist side in his country, basically coming down on him and saying, "No, you're not going to settle because we want those parts of our country back." So he's in an impossible position, but he's going to have to accept that he's going to have to eat a bag of dicks on this one. The senior Ukrainian official said the missile had struck the workshop of a state enterprise in the western city of Lviv near the Polish border. The impact from several submunitions caused minor penetrations of concrete structures at the workshop and made craters in the forest area, the official told Reuters. Separately, the SBU State Security Service said Russia had attempted to destroy civilian infrastructure in the surrounding region amid rapidly deteriorating weather conditions. Moscow said it hit energy infrastructure and had a factory that made drones used in the attack on Putin's residence. Kiev called Moscow's allegation that it attacked Putin's residence in the Novgorod region of northern Russia on December 29th a, quote, absurd lie to sabotage peace talks. President Trump said he does not believe it happened, although something else happened in the area. So, as we're going to talk about now, some of the casualties, unfortunately, this is just going to continue to rage on. Russia fired a total of 242 drones and 36 missiles, including the Orezhnik, to hit infrastructure in the western Lviv region and in and around Kiev, Ukraine said. One of the 4 people killed in Kiev was Serhiy Smolyak, 56, an emergency medic who came to help survivors of a suburban apartment hit by a drone and was killed in a follow-up strike. His body lay covered in on snowy ground near a road. 4 other medics and 5 rescuers were wounded there, which is just absolutely tragic any which way you look at it. Authorities said more than 20 people were injured and electricity was knocked out to more than 500,000 homes, with temperatures forecast to fall to negative 10 degrees Celsius or 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Overnight, Kiev Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said heating had been restored to nearly 1,100 apartment buildings. Of 6,000 were affected by the strikes. Jesus. Residents sheltered underground on mattresses and chairs, some wrapped in blankets. Prime Minister Yulia, I'm going to try to say that last name, said repair crews are working around the clock to restore heat and power in Kiev. Qatar confirmed that its embassy was damaged and said no one was hurt. The country has occasionally acted as mediator in the conflict, which, like, everybody says Qatar is like this awful place where they're doing all this influence on the US, and basically you can explain away the influence on the US by the fact that they have an American university there, and that literally counts as like all their lobbying money. I think after that, it's literally like a few $1,000s or something like that. There was a good video that was going around on Twitter that Pete Quinones shared, which I'll mention him a little bit later. But basically, there's an American university in Qatar, and that explains most of their funding when it comes to like their alleged lobbying of the U.S., which is just largely used as an excuse to say that Israel doesn't have any influence in the U.S., which everybody who knows anything about anything knows it's bullshit. Anyways, Moscow first fired an Orezhnik. Oh, I'm sorry. The Orezhnik was fired just before midnight, according to Lviv regional officials. The Ukrainian military said the missile was moving at a speed of 1,300 kilometers per hour. Moscow first fired an Orezhnik, Russian for hazel tree, against what it said was a military factory in Ukraine in November of 2024. Ukrainian sources said the missile carried dummy warheads, not explosives, and caused limited damage. On Tuesday, Britain and France announced plans to deploy troops in Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire, prompting Moscow to respond that it would view foreign soldiers as legitimate combat targets. The British Defense Minister, John Healey, was in Kiev to discuss the potential of the future deployment. So, as I said many times now, just Russia's not going to go for these kind of peacekeeping, operations. Peacekeeping, right? We need to put that in quotes because why else would you put foreign troops in your country? And this kind of beckons to the Venezuela stuff where there were Cuban militants in the country, but they were there to defend the president, which obviously they didn't do a very good job. But if Britain and France are going to put troops into Ukraine, how else is Russia supposed to look at that other than literally the EU deploying troops to Russia, or I'm sorry, to Ukraine to fight against Russia? If I were in Moscow and I was a military strategist or some kind of general, I'd be like, yeah, you guys, sorry, you're done. Like you can't have people here. Anyway, it's got to be fought on the battlefield. So we're gonna read this one from CNN, and I know, please hold your booze. I just wanted to use this because this is obviously going to be a very biased source. Pretty short read. CIA assesses, which take that for what it's worth. Ukraine was not targeting a Putin residence in drone attack, contrary to Kremlin claims, sources say. Um, by Zachary Cohen. Zachary Cohen. Anyways, CIA assesses the drone attack was not targeting Moscow, or drone attack was not targeting Putin's residence. The CIA has assessed Ukraine was not targeting a residence used by Russian President Vladimir Putin in a recent drone attack in the north of his country, according to U.S. officials, undercutting an assertion that the Russian leader had made to President Donald Trump on a Monday phone call. The CIA's director, John Ratcliffe, briefed Trump on the assessment on Wednesday, the official said. Russia has publicly raised allegations Ukraine attempted to hit Putin's home on Monday, and Trump told reporters that Putin had told him of it over the phone. Oh, sorry. I had a couple drinks this morning, so um, at the time, the president said he was troubled by the reported action, seeming to believe the Russian leader, even as Ukraine strenuously denied it was behind any such attack. I don't like it. It's not good, said Trump, describing himself as very angry upon hearing the claim, which Trump just does these kind of angry letters to Putin, pretty much just saying, oh, I don't like what he's doing. But obviously, he's not going to do anything. Yeah, exactly. There's a reason why I emphasize that, especially when it comes to Ukraine. What is a big ethnicity in Ukraine? What ethnicity is Volodymyr Zelensky? It's not Ukrainian. It's not Qatari either. So, anyways, let's continue on here. You can see it was possible if the allegations was false and such an attack had not occurred, then add, but President Putin told me this morning it did. Sources said Ratcliffe later briefed Trump that the CIA did not believe it was true, and on Wednesday, Trump appeared to have adopted a more skeptical posture towards posting a link to a New York Post editorial on Truth Social with the headline, Putin, quote unquote, attack bluster shows Russia is the one standing in the way of peace. Okay. The Post editorial board noted it was rich that Putin, who has waged a brutal war for nearly 4 years, believes that any violence in his vicinity merits special outrage and asserted that any attack on Putin is more than justified. Okay. But here's the rub. The drone strike likely never happened. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky vigorously denied it, which he's a pathological liar. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said the Russians could provide no evidence and urged the press to take the Kremlin's word for it. No, we won't, the board wrote. CNN has reached out to the White House for comment. The CIA declined to comment. Putin's claim of an attack in the subsequent U.S. assessment that it wasn't true, first reported by the Wall Street Journal, came amid intensive talks led by Trump and his envoys to end the war in Ukraine, which they're just doing an awful job on. Let's be honest here. Putin levied the allegation a day after Trump met Zelensky at Mar-a-Lago and emerged optimistic on progress to broker peace in the conflict. Some European officials have said the claim was an attempt by Putin to derail the peace efforts while not catching Trump's blame. Others have also cast doubt on the Russian claim. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, said it was a deliberate distraction. The defense ministry in Moscow said Wednesday that 91 drones had been launched from northern Ukraine against Putin's residence near the Valdai in the Novgorod in northwestern Russia. More than half had been intercepted several hundred kilometers away, the ministry said, without specifying how it knew they were destined for Valdai. The rest had been intercepted over Novgorod between 3 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. local time on Monday, according to the ministry. The ministry published a map purporting to show the path of the drones where they had been brought down. Okay, so anyways, that is pretty much all I got for Russia and Ukraine. Let me play this ad real quick. I'm going to run and grab a water because I am thirstier than a motherfucker. All right, we're going to take a second today to chill and tell you about the show's sponsors, Tiger Fitness. Make sure you go to the link below to get all the supplements that I use day in, day out, and beyond. As I always say, you do not need supplements to become all jacked and tan or to progress in your health journey, but they could definitely be a useful tool in that respect. So, as you can see on tigerfitness.com, we got MTS Nutrition, Blackstone Labs, Ambrosia, HPN, Nutrix Research, America Labs, Along New Pump Chasers. There's Redcon One, Accent Sledge, plenty of different companies that pretty much have absolutely any supplement you could possibly think of: pre-workouts, fat burners, BCAAs, electrolyte mixes, you name it, it's on there. So go to Tiger Fitness through the link below. Use code Kyle at checkout to let them know that I sent you. Get your protein powder, you name it, anything that's going to help you stick to your diet and hopefully achieve your health goals. All right, thanks. Back to the show. All right. So now I wanted to briefly talk about China and Taiwan. Try to tap a little bit of that every single time I'm on here, just because I don't see any people, especially on the right, ever covering the China Taiwan situation. So I try to do as much work on that as possible. Um, anyways, let's go to this story from Reuters as well. Everybody, please, if you're listening live, please make sure you like. If you're on Twitter, please retweet, please like it. If you're on YouTube, please leave a thumbs up, even hit that notification bell. What the hell? Anyways, let's go here. Trump says Venezuela does not give China a Taiwan president, but it's up to Xi. So I really actually want to talk about this because I saw a lot of right wingers, conservatives, goofballs of some sort of another, basically coming down and losing their mind over this, saying that Trump was kind of being weak on China, but I think this is the right move, because what are you going to do? Like the whole thing is uh it's basically like it's the same situation as Venezuela. I'm sorry. But basically you have the US that just took Venezuela. If China and Russia wanted to do something about it, they literally couldn't. Venezuela is, what is it, like 1,500 miles away from the US? They, they just can't do anything. Russia and China do not have the same power projection that the US has. So, and not only that, their just foreign policy isn't the same as the United States. They just don't do that. So, oh, what the hell? Apparently that didn't work. Anyways, let's cover the rest of this story. Washington, D.C. on January 8th, President Donald Trump said it's up to Chinese President Xi Jinping what China does on Taiwan, but he said he would be very unhappy with a change in the status quo, according to an interview with the New York Times published on Thursday. He, referring to Xi, considers it to be a part of China, and that's up to him what he's going to be doing, Trump told the newspaper. But I've expressed to him that I'd be very unhappy if he did that, and I don't think he'll do that. I hope he doesn't do that, which I don't think China's going to do that either. Trump made the comments in context of an exchange about what lessons Xi might take away from Trump's audacious military operation in Venezuela, which kind of like a bigger point. Every single time something happens in the world, you could watch the meltdown from everybody who's a China hawk or thinks China's like going to take over the world. Oh my God, China's going to go after Taiwan next. All the time. I've been hearing for years now at this point that China's about to take Taiwan. I think it was Pete Hegseth said they're going to take it in 2027. Chase Geyser, who's been on the show before, and I don't hate the guy, but he's been trying to predict this for years now and has always been wrong. Would China go and take Taiwan militarily? Yeah, but the likelihood of that honestly is pretty low. When I had Professor Ken Hammond on back, geez, probably well over 150 episodes ago, he said they prefer to just muddle along. They want to keep doing what they're doing. They're going to have good relations. Taiwan may make a little bit of noise. The U.S. may influence that noise a little bit, but ultimately, they're looking to just kind of chill out right now. Lai Ching-te, I think it is, the president of Taiwan. Let me make sure I got that right. I don't want to mislead you guys. Lai Ching-te, president of Taiwan. Okay, yeah, I got that right. They seek to just kind of keep the status quo going. So, but yeah, I don't think China's going to go after Taiwan. People just are looking for the next big thing to happen. Okay, so here we go. Trump made the context. Okay, no, I already read that. The Republican president said he did not view the situations as analogous because Taiwan did not pose the same type of threat to China that he has said the government of Nicolas Maduro posed to the United States, which Venezuela was not a threat to the United States. He also repeated his belief that Xi would not make a move against Taiwan during his presidency, which ends in 2029. He may do it after we have a different president, but I don't think he's going to do it with me as president. The Trump administration said in a strategy document last year that it aims to prevent conflict with China over Taiwan and the South China Sea by building up U.S. allies' military power. Which, how is this not, basically very, very similar to Ukraine, where the U.S. is basically trying to build up all this stuff in the surrounding areas of China to basically say, "Hey, China, we're going to make this very expensive for you." Why? Why? Lee R. Silver, I've been seeing you a lot on Twitter, dude. Did you come over from Nico's channel? I don't exactly know, but anyways, um, if I've seen you here before, I apologize, but I'm really glad that you're here. Anyways, I'll read your comments here, dude. I still want to go to Taiwan, and the U.S. just put out the notice that they want U.S. assistance out about 2 or 3 years ago. I should have just done that. Yeah, dude. Honestly, you should have just went. You're fine. Oh, you're a Jack viewer. Okay, okay, all right, good, good, good. Well, anyways, it's good to have you here. One of my friends is a real China hawk. All I hear about is these Taiwan airspace invaded over and over again when these people don't realize their airspace has large chunks in the mainland. But I mean, like, that's still to the point I was just making earlier, and even Trump says this. All the international world recognizes Taiwan as part of China. So this is like saying the US is invading Hawaii's airspace, right? That's literally about as analogous as, not 100% analogous, but it's pretty close to analogous. Okay, so yeah, if you're from Jack, you're a good dude then. I trust you. But basically, like, that's China's airspace. It's 70 miles off their coast. Like, we're not talking let's say like the Dominican Republic or Cuba or something like that from the US. We're talking like, you could, if you were driving, you could be there in less than 2 hours, right? Taiwan is very close to China. It's not far at all. So, yeah, like, once again, if China wants to do air, basically invade Taiwan's airspace, it's their territory, and who is going to stop them? Is the U.S. really going to send aircraft carriers over there? I've talked about this plenty of times, and Lyle Goldstein, when he was on Scott Horton's show, talked about this. Basically, if we tried to deploy force over there, we would lose 3,000 troops in like the first month, and they never factor in nuclear escalation. So make of that what you will. Anyways, China views democratically governed Taiwan as its own, and Beijing has never renounced its use of force to bring Taiwan back under its control. Taiwan rejects Beijing's claims. The Taiwan question is purely China's internal affair, and how to resolve it is a matter purely within China's sovereign rights, said Liu Pengyu, a spokesperson for the China's embassy in Washington. The United States has no formal diplomatic ties with Taiwan, which I guess not, but they sell them a lot of weapons. But Washington is the island's most important international backer and is required by law to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself. The issue has been an irritant in U.S. China relations for years. Trump has largely avoided directly saying how he would respond to rising tensions over the island. So there actually was a point in time pretty early on in Trump's presidency where Trump had said that he would not, that basically Taiwan would have to fend for itself. It could buy some weapons from the US, but that was pretty much what they said about all that. Okay, hold on. Let me move this one story here. Uh, Sorry, I'm trying to move stuff around so that way we kind of go a little bit in order that I wanted to go. Okay, we are all good now. Um, Anyways, so continuing on here, we're gonna get into some of the Venezuela stuff. Basically, like Taiwan, okay, yeah, it would be closer to Russia invading Finland. I think they're banking on the idea that the government and military holding up in the mountains. This isn't the 1930s or 40s anymore. Very clownish. Yeah, pretty much like Taiwan is a defensible island because their coast is very rocky, and they would obviously have a lot of air defense systems. And for China to mount a amphibious invasion there, it would require a lot of planning, and also assuming that there would be no submarines or anything to defend Taiwan, which I think they would probably have some of that. The U.S. did Lee, if you go back a few shows, I covered some of the China Taiwan stuff. I've been covering it a lot lately because, like I said, I've seen an awful lack of coverage on this stuff. So I try to talk about it as somberly as possible. And I don't want to say I'm pro China, but I find China to be absolutely fascinating. So if you scroll through the channel through the old videos, I don't know how long you've been subscribed, but there's just plenty of content all about China and the China Taiwan situation. So now moving over to the Venezuela situation. I wanted to talk about how they seized Russian oil tankers, which is a pretty big escalation, not only to Venezuela, but also to Russia, who were supposedly trying to settle this war with. Let me take a sip of Gatorade real quick. I know I said water, but there was Gatorade out. So, anyways, U.S. forces seize fifth oil tanker linked to Venezuela. So, um, my understanding is that this was a Russian flagged tanker that they actually did confirm was one of their tankers. A fifth oil tanker linked to Venezuela was interdicted by U.S. forces in the Caribbean. U.S. Southcom said on Friday. Two U.S. officials confirmed to CBS News that the Coast Guard, supported by the Navy, was in the process of seizing the Olena oil tanker. Southern Command said Marines and sailors launched from the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier for pre-dawn operation to support the Department of Homeland Security as part of its mission to defend our homeland by ending illicit activity and restoring security in the Western Hemisphere. The command posted unclassified footage on social media of a U.S. helicopter landing on the vessel and U.S. personnel searching the deck. Once again, our joint interagency forces sent a clear message this morning. There is no safe haven for criminals, which, okay, so you're saying that Russians are criminals for buying gas. I don't know about that. So here they have the video of it. I'm not going to show that because I don't want to get a strike. I don't know what would happen with that. So feel free to go here and check it out if you feel so inclined. And one more time, make sure you hit the like button while you're listening. In a Truth Social post on Friday, President Trump said the tanker had departed Venezuela without our approval, is now on its way back to the South American country. The oil will be sold through the Great Energy Deal, which we have created for such sales. The U.S. government records show that the Alina was sanctioned for moving Russian oil under its prior name, Minerva M, flagged in Panama, the Associated Press reported. Records show that the Alina flying the flag of Timor-Leste, it is also listed in the International Shipping Registry as having a false flag, meaning the registration it is claiming is not valid, the AP reported. In July, the owner and manager of the ship on its registration changed to a company in Hong Kong. According to ship tracking databases, the Alina last transmitted its location in November in the Caribbean north of the Venezuela coast, the AP reported. Since then, however, the ship has been running dark with its location beacon turned off. The ship has a listed cargo capacity of up to 890,000 barrels of oil, at which the current market price, about $60 a barrel, would be about $53 million, which I was listening to a ExxonMobil official actually talk about some of the oil and stuff coming out of Venezuela. And I think US oil and Canadian oil is about $50 a barrel. I want to make sure I got this right. US oil per barrel. I'm looking it up on Google. Crude oil prices. Okay, recent contracts. How much is oil per barrel in the US? WTI. So basically, for crude, you're looking at about 57.32 per barrel. The Venezuela oil, right? The oil that we're supposed to get from Venezuela that's going to make us all rich cost $80 a barrel, according to an ExxonMobil official who was at the talk with Trump. And if you listen to the show I did with Nico this past Wednesday, he covered that the 30 to 50 million barrels of oil that are allegedly going to hit the market, once again, at $80 a barrel, cover 2 days worth of gasoline for the US. This is a years-long project, and as we're going to cover here in a little bit, investors really ain't that hopped up about their opportunities to invest in Venezuela because there was a tweet, and I wish I would have it pulled up, but it said, "We don't want to invest in Venezuela because we don't know if a fucking tweet is going to change the foreign policy of the United States," which is hilarious but true. So let me get back here. The Alina is the fifth tanker that had been seized by the U.S. forces as a part of broader effort by the Trump administration to control the distribution of Venezuela's oil products globally following the U.S. ouster of President Nicolas Maduro. Two tankers were interdicted on Wednesday, and one North Atlantic and one in the Caribbean Sea, the officials said. The U.S. European Command confirmed the seizure of the Marinera, a Venezuelan linked oil tanker formerly known as the Bella 1 in the North Atlantic after pursuing it from the coast of South America. U.S. Southern Command announced that the other intercepted vessel, the MT Sophia, was conducting illicit activities in international waters in the Caribbean, and they never specify what. Ships like the Marinere are a part of so-called shadow fleet of ships that illegally transport oil from sanctioned nations like Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, which, like, who cares? Are they not allowed to buy oil? Like, that's basically what they're saying now. And I also proposed this idea, and not that the administration is listening to me, because if they weren't, then, or if they were, then they wouldn't be doing this ridiculous shit when it comes to all over the world. But like, why not provide like a sunset for when foreign countries can buy oil? Like, this isn't my preferred option. This is just a path for basically peace. If you want to have the whole Monroe Doctrine, which no one's ever read, because if you read it, it basically says European powers can't arm countries down in Latin America. That's pretty much the gist of it. But basically, um, you like, why not provide a sunset? So, like, hey, Russia, we are taking over Venezuela, right? We ousted the president. That's your ally. We don't care. You now have 2 weeks before you can no longer buy oil from Venezuela. Get all your fucking boats out of here, and we're taking over. That would be preferable to we're going to steal your tankers, but we're going to claim we want peace in your country. How do you think they're going to look at you when you're being basically hostile towards them? I don't know how people can expect, excuse me, Russia to really take the US serious as take the US serious as they're doing this to Russia. Russia and China are dangerous enemies. Also, we want to be the ones selling oil to Russia and China. This admin is beyond retarded. Yeah, but also, like, hey, let's also arm the countries that they're going to potentially be at war with or have some kind of conflict with. Let's sell them billions of dollars in weapons. How, what could possibly go wrong? God, I can't stand it. Drives me nuts. Maduro has rejected the U.S. allegations about how the vessels are being used and accuses the U.S. of plundering Venezuelan resources under the cover of law enforcement, which my man's right. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who shared a longer video of the seizure on Friday, said the Alina was a ghost fleet tanker ship that departed Venezuela attempting to evade U.S. forces, which, like, I don't know, man. Like, if you had 36,000 sanctions on me, and you had as many sanctions as you do on Venezuela, I think I would try to escape that too. The ghost fleets will not outrun justice. They will not hide under the false claims of nationality. Noem said on X, the Coast Guard will seize sanctioned oil tankers and enforce the U.S. and international law, and eliminate these funding streams for illicit activity, including narco terrorism, which just I've ran and raved about this a million times. Nobody heard this word narco terrorism until fucking 5 minutes ago when all of a sudden the US wanted to start fighting a war again. Then all of a sudden, oh, look, narco terrorism is here. Yeah, God. Everybody, please make sure you like it, retweet, subscribe, make sure you're doing all that good stuff. And also make sure, if you can, leave a super chat. I would really appreciate it. After the US capture of Maduro earlier this month, Mr. Trump pitched Venezuela's oil wealth as a way to financially fuel the country's economic recovery and deliver benefits for energy consumers and oil companies. He told Fox News' Sean Hannity in an interview that aired Thursday night that he's expecting oil companies to spend at least $100 billion to rebuild the whole oil infrastructure in the South American country, which I have not looked into that meeting that Trump had, but it seems like it didn't go that well, because basically what I've gotten from most of the energy companies when I look on Twitter and from official accounts, and even people who live there was a channel, and I'll see if I could find the video and maybe share it, where this guy was basically saying, like, nobody wants to do this because it just doesn't make sense right now. Mr. Trump, which I do find it funny how CBS calls him Mr. Trump instead of President Trump, is meeting with the big oil industry executives on Friday afternoon. CEOs from Chevron, Exxon, ConocoPhillips, Continental, Halliburton, HKN, Valero, Marathon, Shell, Trafigura, Vital Americas, Repsol, Annie, Aspect Holdings, Tallgrass, Reza Energy, and Hill Corp will be at the White House for the meeting. And as far as I know, they're pretty much like, yeah, nah, nah, not gonna do it. Yeah, so it's not looking too good. So hold on, let me take another sip, or we'll call that a swig. Let me mute this real quick. Uninvestable. So this is from Quartz, a news agency here. We're going to read this whole article here and talk a little bit about what's going on with the oil in Venezuela. Okay, sorry about that. Uninvestable. Trump and U.S. oil giants don't clinch a deal on Venezuela. The meeting was the latest chapter in Trump's open ended intervention in Venezuela, a South American nation he has said he wanted to control for years. And before we even get to this, I really wanted to talk about how people will say that it's illegal to, it's basically illegal to say that Zionists run the world, or Jews run the world, right? It's basically illegal to say that, right? But then all of a sudden they say, hey, well, we're going to put Stephen Miller in charge of Venezuela. We're overthrowing Venezuela and we're putting the Jewish man that works for Donald Trump as the leader. Guys, at least try to hide it a little bit. I'm not saying they control everything, but like, you're not helping your case if you're trying to tamp down on anti-Semitism like the Trump administration is. Like, they're like full woke about this. They have a whole task force headed by Leo Terrell that literally has patrols in cities monitoring anti-Semitism. And then you guys throw Stephen Miller in charge of Venezuela. Like, at least do Marco Rubio, who's a Cuban. I just, you guys ain't hiding this that well. JC, remember when Ryan McMakin wrote that great article years ago on how China isn't the global threat we've been told? You should have him on as a guest to talk about it in the context of 2026. Yeah, I would actually love that. He's been really good on like the Palantir stuff, as far as I know. And I think I've heard the podcast he did with Tho Bishop about that. And Tho is a China hawk. McMakin, from what you're saying, JC, doesn't seem like he is. So yeah, maybe I'll reach out to him and get him on, and I would love to talk to him about that and some of his thoughts about Palantir, and obviously the rest of the Trump administration, how this is going to go. So, President Donald Trump has gathered with chief executives from U.S. and European oil companies on Friday to drum up private sector cash for his plans to salvage Venezuela's devastated oil sector and exploit its reserves. They're not buying what he's selling so far. Executives from Chevron, ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Continental Resources were among the 14 multinationals at the White House meeting. European companies such as Repsol, Shell, and Eni were also in attendance. The meeting represented the latest chapter in Trump's open ended deadly intervention in Venezuela, a South American nation he said he wants to control for years. Trump kicked off the meeting by announcing the interim Venezuelan government handed over 30 million oil barrels to the U.S. on Thursday, an amount equivalent to a month of production, which that conflicts with what Nico said, but I don't know exactly. The departure of Maduro, departure, quote unquote, makes it possible an incredible future for both nations, Venezuela and the United States, in which we will more closely integrate the economies of the two major energy powers in the Western Hemisphere. Trump said at the public portion of the gathering. The other cabinet officials, such as Secretary of State Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, and Energy Secretary Chris Wright, attended as well. Trump views enlisting the support of oil companies as the central element in his effort to rebuild Venezuela's ailing economy. Yet one after another, most oil CEOs gave carefully scripted remarks, stopping well short of committing to spending binge to reestablish a presence in Venezuela, where socialist government with a prior history of confiscating private assets is still in power. Which this is kind of the point I've made now, is that like in order to really go through with what Trump wants to do, you have to have a military occupation because the Supreme Court still recognizes Maduro as the president. The vice president, Delcy Rodriguez, who is now the acting president, still recognizes Maduro as the president. Even the opposition parties, as Nico and I talked about on the show on Thursday or on Wednesday, the opposition parties, are protesting. They want Maduro back. So unless you're going to go in and regime change the whole regime, I don't know how you do this. I don't know how they're going to get all these companies to go in there, and not only that, grant them safe passage, like, because the gas wells, to my understanding, are actually defended by Venezuela's military because 'cause they're publicly owned. The government stole them, so, they have the military defending them. So, are you gonna start literally war, like, boots on the ground, killing the Venezuelan military to get this oil sector back up? And then on top of that, you're producing oil at $80 a barrel. um, I just this is ridiculous. How are you going to defend this? Um, it's always mob affiliated groups, dude. Always, always. Here wrote a few articles around 2021 about how China's global power is exaggerated and how these narratives serve as a new Cold War benefit. Yeah, 100%. Me and Tommy Salmons were actually just texting about this. And as much as I love him, and I think he is just one of the most wonderful people in the world, he's, I don't want to say a China hawk, but he's more skeptical than I am. I think he doesn't know as much as I do because I've looked into this topic very deeply. But he's McMakin's absolutely right. This is basically to serve a new Cold War. Every single national defense strategy and national security strategy that comes out every couple of years, they always say China's the number one threat. Now, granted, this new national security strategy says they're focusing on, the domestic front and the Western Hemisphere more, but they're still saying they're going to arm up all the quote unquote Indo-Pacific. So they're really not pulling away from China and the South China Sea. They're just looking to basically put a little bit more emphasis on the Western Hemisphere rather than the South China Sea. Anyways, continuing on. ExxonMobil CEO Darren Woods delivered the most blunt assessment. If we look at the legal and commercial constructs and frameworks in place today in Venezuela, it's uninvestable. Um, so significant changes have to be made to those commercial frameworks and the legal system. Woods added that ExxonMobil exited the country nearly 2 decades ago when prior Venezuelan government under Hugo Chavez nationalized the oil projects. We've had our assets there seized twice, which how could you blame them? You got bit 2 times before. You know what they say, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. He said the company was prepared to send a technical team within weeks to assess the state of the Venezuelans' oil pipelines and more. ExxonMobil contends that it still has 12 billion outstanding debt from the Venezuelan government. Chevron is the only major U.S. oil company still operating in Venezuela under the special license granted by the U.S. government, given by the sanctions imposed. Chevron Vice Chair Mike Nelson wasn't any more enthusiastic about expanding operations in the current landscape. Chevron has been a part of Venezuela's past, Nelson said. We are certainly committed to its present, and we very much look forward as a proud American company to help build a better future. After the U.S. military raid that toppled the Venezuelan Nicolas Maduro from power, the Trump administration gradually stepped up its authority over Caracas in the past week. The moves included the U.S. asserting control of its oil sales indefinitely and engineering a handover of a month's worth of Venezuela's oil production. A U.S. naval armada remains off the coast, blockading the country, which is a act of war. Trump said he was willing to provide security guarantees for the oil companies. He didn't specify whether that would include deploying U.S. boots on the ground to protect future oil sites. He did make one item clear, though. If you don't want to go in, just let me know because I've got 25 people that aren't here today who are willing to take your place, Trump said, which, if I'm being honest here, I think that's Trump bluffing. I don't think he really has that many investors. I think he's just saying that because he wants them to go invest. He basically wants to have private equity invest in Venezuela so that way he doesn't have to use the US taxpayer. But I think eventually it's going to come out of our pockets. The CEO of all these oil companies, if they know their history, cough, cough, mandatory Palestine, wouldn't want to touch this with a 100-mile pole. Yeah, exactly. They need way more guarantees, not counting PR. Well, yeah, and that's what I've said is basically you're going to have a military occupation of Venezuela and basically, like they said, security guarantees to make sure that all these oil companies are going to be all right. Okay, so are we going to deploy all of the Navy down there and the Marines and the Army to go protect oil fields in Venezuela? And we're going to literally just fight an endless war in Venezuela to basically secure their oil sector? I, I don't think that's going to happen, man. I don't think Trump has the balls for it. And even if he does, I don't think it's going to go well. And I just wanted to go to this tab as well. I don't know that I'm going to read this because I've been reading quite a bit. Um, I just wanted to make sure that we got this in here. What the hell am I doing? Trump's 1.5 actually, yeah, you know what? We'll read it. Trump's $1.5 trillion defense budget should not come as a surprise. Donald Trump announced on Truth Social on January 8th he would ask the Congress for $1.5 trillion defense budget for the next fiscal year. Many national defense experts have argued for years that increases in the budget are necessary to modernize the U.S. military, particularly to deter and defeat peer adversaries such as China, rather than terrorist groups in smaller states. But Trump's announcement comes with a bit of a sticker shock. If the administration follows through with it, this proposal would constitute 66% increase over the 2026 defense budget that Congress just authorized. Remember that Trump that said he wanted to get everybody to roll back their military budget? I remember. Trump's announcement could be a negotiating tactic. Russell Vought, director of the Office of Management and Budget, has suggested that the administration might seek another reconciliation bill from Congress, which could pass on a party line vote to increase defense spending. The 1.5 trillion could then be a split between party line reconciliation bill and the regular defense budget process. But if it isn't a negotiating tactic, the sudden budget increase would signal dramatic growth over the administration's defense budget policies in its first year, and especially in its early days. One of the first acts of the incoming Pentagon team, with help from the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, was to cut 8% of the Pentagon's budget, estimated to be around $50 billion annually across a five-year fiscal year defense program. This was followed by further cuts and measures looking for efficiencies, estimated at another $5 billion to $11 billion. The strongest indicator of the second Trump administration's initial goal, however, was the administration's fiscal year 2026 budget request of $848.3 billion, $1.5 billion less than the $849.8 billion proposed by the Biden administration for fiscal year 2025. Given the effects of inflation, the fiscal year 2026 budget would have reduced the Pentagon's purchasing power if not for one big beautiful act, or one big beautiful bill act, which provide an additional $150 billion. One could therefore view Trump's advocacy for such a large spending increase as a surprise, but in the context of global threats to the United States, a long overdue defense modernization bill, and the ambitious Trump's signature defense priorities, the request should probably have been expected. For example, paying for a Golden Dome for America could cost trillions of dollars over the next decade, which is just ridiculous. We don't need a Golden Dome. And the Golden Fleet and the Boeing F-47 fighter jet will also cost hundreds of billions of dollars. Additionally, fielding many of the one big beautiful bill's priorities, which include spending tens of billions of dollars on precise mass capabilities and other lower cost systems that could be fielded quickly, would require additional funding over time to sustain or make them part of the U.S. military arsenal. So, just to kind of go on how ridiculous it is to keep increasing Pentagon spending, our military is still a very, very dated military. And on top of that, like, China doesn't spend this much on military and they don't have the same force projection. The U.S. is also very, very blessed to have two oceans. We're literally landlocked by nobody, and we have relatively friendly neighbors. Although that could change if the US decides to start drone striking Mexico. Um, Mexico and Canada both really aren't like enemies in any meaningful sense. Their militaries pose just absolutely zero threat to the United States. So just to be worried about them is just ridiculous. Um, so the idea that we need this Golden Dome and $1.5 trillion, just, it doesn't make any sense. It just, I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know why they're doing it. Well, they're basically just trying to goose defense spending to make everybody feel good and put a whole bunch of money in defense contractors' pockets. So, anyways, let's continue on here. Trump's announcement is also notable in the combination with an executive order that he released on the same day. The order directed the Pentagon to prevent defense contractors from buying back stocks from investors or conducting corporate distributions where they're underperforming on defense contracts. Given the way the defense industrial base has struggled to deliver for many reasons, big ticket items like fighter jets and submarines, these provisions could have real consequences if they aren't political theater. Essentially, Trump's defense budget announcement is consistent with something that many defense experts have said for years: the need for a larger defense budget at some level, even though $1.5 trillion figure is eye opening. Assuming there are limited trade off spending and other national priorities, additional defense spending could modernize the U.S. military to contend with great power competitors such as China. It is also true that the defense industrial base has repeatedly failed to deliver on its promises, so substantive reforms need to accompany any additional spending to yield results. Defense spending alone, even with such a significant increase, will not deliver the capabilities the United States needs to protect its national interests, which I think is ridiculous. Defense spending growth needs to be accompanied by an increase in defense industrial base capacity, follow through on scaling precise mass systems in the short term, and further reform of the Pentagon processes to build the modern U.S. military. So we're going to get into the Israel and Iran stuff. There is quite a bit to cover there. So I'm going to run one more ad and then we will get into the rest of it. All right, guys, we are going to take a quick break from the show to tell you about the show's sponsor. We are now brought to you by Fox & Sons Coffees. You can see right here, I got the Den Blend Dark. Really enjoy that. I've been drinking a lot of their Brazil Honey Prep. Right here, as you can hear, there's not a lot of beans left in it because I've been drinking it quite a bit. Just tell you a little bit about Fox and Sons, why I support them and why you should too, is that Stephen had started the company up in Michigan to help teach his son about entrepreneurship. I'm all about that, and I do firmly believe that in order to spread liberty in our lifetimes, we have to support those who support similar values as us. And Stephen does support all the same libertarian values that I bring and talk about on the show a lot. So go to foxandsons.com, use code Kyle at checkout to get 15% off of orders $25 or more, and there's always free shipping whenever you place an order that is more than $37.99. Find their all right. We're good. I think everybody got that. Fox and Sons Coffee, all that good stuff. Make sure you hit a like on the way in and a like on the way out. Leave a super chat, leave a comment, anything. Tell me to screw off. Make sure you're subscribed. All that good stuff. It is good to see everybody. Hopefully, everybody is doing very, very well. If you guys like me doing these streams a little bit later in the day, which it seems like I get better viewership at this time, then by all means, I will start switching them to the evenings on Sunday. But that's all up to you guys, man. I just work here. I got a pretty open schedule on Sunday. So from our dear friend Dave DeCamp over at antiwar.com, who's just on the show recently, which there's a video on TikTok that I posted of him and I talking that a lot of people really seem to like. From January 8th, Israeli forces kill 15 Palestinians, including 5 children, in attacks across Gaza. So this ceasefire is holding up really well, as you can see. Israeli forces on Thursday significantly ramped up attacks across Gaza in violation of the U.S.-backed ceasefire deal, killing at least 15 Palestinians, including 5 children, the Palestinian news agency WAFA has reported. Israeli attacks on Thursday include the bombing of a tent in the Al-Mawasi camp in southern Gaza near Khan Yunis, killing at least 4 people, including children, whose bodies were burned by the attack. Jesus. Ugh, dark. WAFA reported the separate Israeli strike hit Khan Yunis, killing 1 person, and another tent was bombed by Israeli forces near Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. In Jabalia, northern Gaza, Israeli forces also bombed a school-turned-shelter, killing at least 1 Palestinian and an 11-year-old girl, Hamza Hassou, who was shot in the head during an assault by IDF troops, which is just inexcusable, which, we keep hearing most moral army, but I don't know. This doesn't seem like most moral activities. Israeli troops combed the area and heavy shooting began, Hossou's uncle told Al Jazeera. I began to run to the floor where Hamza, my niece, lives. I saw Hamza lying on the floor with blood coming out of her nose and mouth. I knew a gunshot hit her head. On Thursday night, more Israeli strikes hit the Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza and the Zitoun neighborhood in Gaza City, killing 6 more people. The IDF claimed on Thursday that one of the strikes it launched targeted what it said was the site of a failed rocket launch, but it provided no evidence for its assertion. The IDF also said the alleged failed rocket launch was a ceasefire violation, but has been conducting daily ceasefire violations. Thank you for that irony, Dave. Gaza's health ministry said on Thursday that since the ceasefire deal was signed, the IDF has killed at least 425 Palestinians and wounded 1,206. If the deaths reported by WAFA are confirmed by the ministry, which counts bodies that are brought to the hospitals and morgues, the death toll will climb to 434. Jesus. 434 people killed in a ceasefire. So I do want to provide credit where it's due, however, which, credit is generous as you could put that. Donald Trump did get this ceasefire through, and as it's not really a ceasefire, but I guess to his credit, the applied pressure did at least get Israel to stop down the absolute mass slaughter of Palestinians. I haven't kept up with the death count recently, but it's abundantly clear that they were just killing people en masse. The Zionists and people who love Israel will say that, oh, well, if they wanted to commit genocide, they could. I don't know, man. They killed, I think it's well over 60,000 people. And some people are saying that there could be over 200,000 people dead because that original death count from the Gaza Health Ministry doesn't include people dead, buried under the rubble because those people are lost. They can't find their bodies. It's just counting the bodies that come in. And my understanding is you could find a registry for this and verify all the names. So brutal stuff, man. This is what your taxpayer money goes to, is basically just allowing Israel to slaughter people en masse. So, yeah, man, I'm not about it. And we're going to talk about Hezbollah a little bit. Israel's continued attacks on Lebanon could derail Hezbollah disarmament. In Beirut, strikes on Lebanon this week were the latest attacks conducted by Israel and its northern neighbor. Israel's consistently bombed Lebanon and conducted drone strikes despite a United States brokered ceasefire in November of 2024. Jeez, it's almost 2 years ago, or about a year and a half ago. The United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, has documented more than 10,000 ceasefire violations by the Israelis, including 7,500 airspace violations and 2,500 ground invasions. The Israeli military also continues to occupy 5 points in Lebanon despite agreeing to withdraw all its troops. On Monday, Israel issued forced evacuation orders for 4 villages in Lebanon's south and the Bekaa Valley in eastern Lebanon before bombing the areas. The Israeli military said that the attacks had hit targets associated with the Lebanese group Hezbollah and the Palestinian group Hamas. Then on Tuesday, Israel conducted more attacks in southern Lebanon, saying that it was attacking or targeting Hezbollah operatives. Weakened Hezbollah. Israel's killed more than 4,000 people in Lebanon since October 2023 as part of its war with Hezbollah. Most of the dead were killed between September and November 2024, when more than 1.2 million were displaced by Israel's evacuation warnings. The World Bank estimates that Israel left Lebanon with approximately $11 billion in needs for reconstruction and recovery. The war was also deeply diminished Hezbollah's power in the country. Much of its military leadership was killed during the intensification, including its longtime leader Hassan Nasrallah. In the war's aftermath, the group is being pressured to give weapons that have long defined its identity as a resistance group to Israel. In August 2025, the Lebanese government approved a plan to have Lebanese Armed Forces, LAF, disarm Hezbollah. The decision was domestically popular outside of Hezbollah's support base as a way of strengthening the Lebanese state, but also came as a result of increasing pressure from the US and Israel. For its part, Hezbollah has repeatedly rejected its calls for disarmament. The group says that Israel has not abided by its side of the ceasefire, which objectively it just hasn't. To demand inclusive arms control while Israel is committing aggression and the United States is imposing its will on Lebanon means that you are not working in Lebanon's interest, but rather the interest of what Israel wants. I mean, is he wrong? Nasrallah's successor, Naim Qassem, said in a speech on January 3rd, 2026, "We call for equipping the Lebanese army to enable it to be an army for the country that protects against enemies, in addition to the other tasks it is doing in the face of the country's in the face of drug and theft gangs, all spies who tamper with the country's security." Um, yeah, I think the rest of this, I'll just kind of skip on to the next story because this gets into a little bit more of the interesting stuff. Basically, it's just Israel's completely violating every facet of the ceasefire that they agreed to, and it should be of no shock to anybody. So let me check the comments real quick. Lee R. Silver. I hate the term moral army because it's a way of saying the good guys. Sort of like terrorists is often used for opposition armies, military propaganda all around. Yeah, exactly. Like you see people now on the right talking about this whole Renee Good shooting, which like I'm maybe taking the moderate position, which some people will surely hate. And I'm perfectly aware that that's controversial and I just don't care. But like, first things first, as a cop or an ICE agent, it is a really bad idea to stand in front of a car. As a woman with police all around you, it is a really stupid idea to try and drive away. As a cop, that doesn't warrant shooting that woman 3 times in the fucking face. It just doesn't. So, maybe that makes me the moderate on this, but I believe everybody could have handled that better, and if you were that woman in that situation, it was a really bad idea to try and drive away. It's just that was not a good idea, but also, why would you stand in front of a vehicle? Anyways, Israeli Prime Minister says agents operating in Iran amid protests. Israel's far right heritage minister Amici Eliyahu claimed on Thursday that Israeli agents are operating on the ground in Iran amid protests triggered by a collapse of the Iranian rial and a severe economic crisis. Huh. Speaking to Israel's army radio, Eliyahu said Israel had used on the ground agents during the 12-day war with Iran June last year, adding that similar operatives were active during the country's current crisis. When we attacked Iran during Rising Line, we were on its soil and knew how to lay the groundwork for a strike. I can assure you that we have some of our people operating right there right now. The minister added that the agents, while not working for regime change, are weakening Iran's capabilities. Are they now acting to directly topple the regime? No. Are they acting to ensure Iran cannot threaten us from all other aspects? Yes. Israel's use of intelligence agents in Iran during the 12-day war was also acknowledged by Tehran, which has carried out multiple arrests since. Iran has executed at least 10 people convicted of spying for Israel's Mossad intel agency since June. Eliyahu's remarks add fuel to the allegations of external interference in Iran by Israel, as well as the United States, a line pushed by Iranian officials and state media, which seems right. Iran's leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said on Friday, struck a defiant tone in face of the protests, said that U.S. President Donald Trump's hands were stained with the blood of more than 1,000 Iranians. He's right. An apparent reference to the U.S. backed Israeli strikes on Iran last year. Khamenei said the arrogant U.S. leader would be overthrown like the imperial dynasty that ruled Iran up to the 1979 revolution. Last night in Tehran, a bunch of vandals came and destroyed a building that belongs to them to please the U.S. president. He said in an address to the supporters as men and women in the audience had chanted to the mantra of death to America. Everyone knows the Islamic Republic came to power with the blood of hundreds of thousands of honorable people, and it will not back down in the face of saboteurs. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi made similar remarks on Friday, accusing the U.S. and Israel of interference. This is what the Americans and Israelis have stated that they are directly intervening in protests in Iran. Araghchi said during a visit to Lebanon. They are trying to transform the peaceful protests into divisive and violent ones, he said, adding that regarding the possibility of seeing military intervention against Iran, we believe that there's a low possibility of this because their previous attempts were total failures. Trump, appearing boosted by his recent abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, has threatened military action against Iran to counter any government crackdowns on protests. Activists said on Friday the death toll of the protests had reached 62. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said in a statement the world body was deeply disturbed by the reports of violence and called for an investigation. Those responsible for any violations must be held to account in line with international norms and standards, which, once again, if they're going to investigate and they're going to claim this whole moral high ground, nah, bro. Nah. Like, what are you going to do if Iran is killing their protesters? And this goes to this whole ridiculous idea that Trump's on about now, where he I think it was Dave Smith that was talking about the shifting goalposts here. So initially it was Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, which they were never building, but Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And then it became they can enrich up to 60%. And then it became they can't enrich at all. And then all of a sudden we felt the 12-day war, which people said it wasn't a war and that everything was taken care of, even though now all of a sudden we have to go back to war with Iran. But regardless of that, now it's basically, well, Iran can't mistreat its own protesters. I can't with this neocon shit. Like, can we just for once focus on America? We're not seeing anything. I'm trying to keep up with Twitter as well. I'm gonna do a quick scroll through here and make sure I didn't miss anything. because the whole basically this whole situation with where is it with Iran. I'm trying to keep up with it best I can, but I'm not seeing anything here. Iran protests enter third week. Justice Department is now probing Fed Chair Powell. Trump is saying that he's going to support the protests in Iran as well. So, like, what does that mean? Are you going to provide weapons? Like, are you going to provide money? What does that mean to support the protesters in Iran? I don't know, man. I don't know. So, anyways, yeah, this shit's really starting to pop off, man. I don't like it one bit. So we're going to finish up here. U.S. warns Iran amid growing anti-government demonstrations and clashes. Supreme Leader Khamenei calls for unity amid protests, labeling demonstrators as foreign agents serving U.S. interests. United States President Donald Trump says Iran is in big trouble, and again warned he could order military strikes. His video showed anti-government protests raging across the country, and authorities blacked out the internet to restrain growing unrest. Iran's in big trouble. It looks to me that the people are taking over certain cities, and that nobody thought were really possible just a few weeks ago. Trump, who bombed Iran in June, had warned Tehran last week that the U.S. could come to the protesters' aid, issued another warning, saying, "You better not start shooting because we'll start shooting too." Which, just like, are we seriously going to put troops in Iran? Like, how is that going to go? Iran is an enormous country with an enormous military. And yeah, you could say they're paper tigers, but we're pretty outstretched as it is. Do you really think we need to go fight Iran? Rights groups have documented dozens of deaths in protesters in nearly 2 weeks, and with Iranian state TV showing clashes and fires, the semi-official Tasnim news agency reported that several police officers had been killed overnight. I just hope the protesters in Iran are going to be safe because that's a very dangerous place right now, Trump added. In an address broadcast on Iranian state TV earlier on Friday, Iran's Ayatollah Khamenei called for unity in the face of terrorist actions as mass protests continue to rock the country. Khamenei warned against the protests, which authorities have framed as a plot by foreign enemies, primarily the U.S., and reiterated a threat that authorities will crack down on the unrest. Which, why wouldn't you, especially when they're being agitated by foreign agitators? Khamenei accused the protesters of acting on behalf of President Trump, saying rioters were attacking the public property, warning that Tehran would not tolerate people acting as quote unquote mercenaries for foreigners. He accused Trump of having hands stained with blood of Iranians, which is absolutely true. At least 62 people have been killed, including 14 security personnel and 48 protesters since demonstrations began on December 28th, according to the human rights activist news agency, Harana, an overseas-based Iranian rights group. Well, President Masoud Pezeshkian has called for restraint for the state to listen to genuine grievances. Other voices have warned that the authorities will show no leniency, noting that the protests have received support from foreign foes, which Israel said they are. Reporting from Tehran, Al Jazeera's Tawhid Asadi said many citizens in Tehran had received messages from police asking them to avoid going to locations where violence erupts. This is the latest that we have heard from the police, and officials are saying that government is going to be very strict, very decisive when it comes to actions against rioters, he said. Iranian rights groups Hanga report on Friday that a protest march in Zahedin, which is dominated by Baluch minority group, was met with gunfire that wounded several people. Protesters had taken to the streets after Friday prayers. I don't see if there's anything else really too crazy. Already covered that a little bit earlier. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Trump rejecting diplomacy. Yeah, so that's pretty much all I wanted to cover today. I went through a lot, man. I feel like I went through those stories pretty freaking quick, and hopefully you guys learned a lot. Hopefully it was enjoyable. One more time, please consider becoming a channel member where you can see all of a Common Crown's previous footage. Hit that link below. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the like. Leave a super chat if you'd feel so kind. Channel memberships are only $2.99 a month, and you would be in the company of Miss Rachel Wilson Abrogate D's, Trey 50 Daniel, Siege D, and of course my buddy B Cornish, the other guitar player for Common Crown. So feel free to join the wonderful people over there in the members segment where I do occasional posts. And I also, like I said, I have uncensored podcasts up there. I have all the Common Crowns footage that I get. You can access all of that by becoming a channel member for the lowly price of $2.99 a month. And now I wanted to make sure I get a shout out to Worldwide Graphics and also tell you about the Great Megalodon because Worldwide Graphics did this awesome little media thing for the Great Megalodon. Here we go. So as you can see there, I do have now a little bit of virtual assets for the Great Megalodon. Make sure you go subscribe to that YouTube channel. If you go over to the videos tab, or I'm sorry, the posts tab, I have the channel linked over there. And you could go ahead, hit that, subscribe. There's going to be videos and content up there. If you're looking for heavy metal stuff, that is going to be one-stop place or your one-stop shop for all things heavy metal. I'll probably talk about gaming and other stuff over there. It's just going to be fun. So, yeah, go check that out. I wanted to briefly touch on the food pyramid stuff. I haven't looked at it myself. Actually, maybe I could actually do that, and we'll just look at this real quick. Updated food pyramid 2026. Let's see. We'll skip right to the very end of this here. Show this tab instead. Blow this up. Zoom in. Okay, so the guidelines emphasize simple, flexible guidance rooted in modern nutrition science. Modern nutrition science. Prioritize protein at every meal. I actually really like this recommendation. So thumbs up for me from the Trump administration. You guys did a good job here. Consume full fat dairy with no added sugars. I like that one quite a bit too. So full fat dairy. I maybe wouldn't go with full fat dairy. I would go with maybe no fat dairy if you can, because that doesn't always have no added sugars. I like that quite a bit. Eat vegetables and fruits throughout the day, focusing on whole forms. Like that quite a bit as well. That's really good stuff. Incorporate healthy fats from whole foods such as meats, seafoods, eggs, nuts, seeds, olives, and avocados. So meats don't have healthy fats. I know this is going to piss everybody off, but saturated fat is not a healthy fat. Go back and listen to the show I did with Alan Flanagan, and also look into the Mendelian randomization where they kind of discover people who have the same genetics and they plot them over the course of a lifetime, and they just look at their LDL and correlate with heart disease. People with LDL always have higher risk of heart disease. Focus on whole grains while sharply reducing refined carbohydrates. Kind of neutral on that. Limit highly processed foods, added sugars, and artificial additives. I'm good with all that except for the artificial additives, because artificial additives really aren't a problem. I don't see that as a big deal, but limiting highly processed foods and added sugars, that's actually a good idea. Eat the right amount for you based on age, sex, size, and activity level, which I guess is a right right recommendation. Choose water and unsweetened beverages to support hydration. You could drink Diet Pop, that's perfectly fine, and limit alcohol consumption for better overall health. I completely agree with this one, although I do like alcohol quite a bit. So I promise you guys I would do the food pyramid because it is called the In Liberty and Health podcast. So I give you a little snippet there of health. But yeah, so I think that's about all I got. I don't really want to talk about anything else, and I've been going for about an hour and a half now. I covered a lot of information there. So, like I said, hopefully you guys really, really enjoy this. Make sure you go subscribe to the Great Megalodon on Substack, where I put out usually about a stack a week. And make sure you go follow me on Twitter, Matovcik on Twitter. Is there anything else I want? New Common Crown music is going to be here very, 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 very shortly. I promise you guys. So, one more time, hit a like on the way out. And this Wednesday, because I told all you guys I would remind you at a certain point in the show, this Wednesday we're going to be doing 1 year of Trump with my dear friend Pete Quinones. So make sure you tune in for that. That's going to be a really, really cool show. And guys, until next time. Oh, and by the way, I'll be on Nico's show again on Wednesday night. And of course, go to 5 till midnight. Go subscribe to the 5 till midnight YouTube channel and all that good stuff. Hit a like, check out A Common Crown. Come back Wednesday night. Go over to Nico's channel. And of course, go to 5 till midnight where you'll see me throughout this week. And rock and roll, guys. Thank you so much. Take care.